Take 3, January 29, 2018.
How does the title relate to the book? I believe the title relates to the book, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, because the diving bell it symbolizes him being stuck within his body, and the butterfly is like his personality. So like his personality is the same as it's always been. He's just now stuck within his body.
Yeah, I agree with that, but also like the diving bell. It's like when you're underwater with the diving bell, like that's your only way you're living, right? And because of his like what happened to him and like the locked in syndrome, he's like without other people, like almost his diving bell, and so he'd die without that. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like, does it make sense?
Yeah, the machines keep him
Yeah.
alive, and that's the diving bell. Yeah, and like if the butterfly represents his personality, then he can still explore within the diving bell, which would be his body, and he
Yeah.
can still like be imaginative and think about everything, but ultimately if he leaves the diving bell, he dies.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 2. What was the author's purpose in writing the book?
I believe the author's purpose in writing the book was to like show people like what his life was like before the accident, like during and after. So like it pretty much shows that like he's the same character before and after, because even when he was within like his body, the diving bell, like he was still making jokes. Like he still had like he had the same
Oh
personality.
yeah, like to maybe show that even if you do have locked in syndrome, you can still live. But like there's still a purpose to living.
And like it kind of shows like people with disabilities, like they're still people, like they still have like feelings.
Yeah, like they're not dead. Like their body might be basically dead, but their mind is still working.
Yeah, and he talks about that in like the later chapters of the book where he opens up about what his life was like before the syndrome, and he talks about how his colleagues were talking about him like he was some kind of vegetable,
Yeah.
right? And that he couldn't think anymore. So I think he wrote the book just to show people that he could still think and he still had ideas.
Yeah. Various healthcare professionals were responsible for Arthur's care. Do you think it was necessary to have so many specialists involved? How do you think this impacts the costs of his care?
Well, I believe it was necessary to have that many specialists involved because his whole body was affected, like
Yeah.
his mind, his respiratory system, like everything, like his body. So like you couldn't just have like one person working on him.
Yeah.
Like he lost all of his speech, his hearing was impaired. So you can't just have one person working on
couldn't
him
even
all
eat.
at once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody had to feed,
He had
and
a
a
tube.
specialist, they specialize in one thing. So when your whole body's gone, you're gonna have a lot of them to keep you alive.
For sure, yeah. And ultimately he needs that would make his pay exponentially more expensive. But since he was this head of this big business, then he had the money to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that.
I think it goes along with how much it impacts the cost of his care.
Yeah, I believe having all the specialists made the cost rise up pretty fast.
And especially with how long he was in hospital, like he spent multiple seasons, and it seemed like years in the hospital. So
Yeah.
the medical bills had to.
It's just gonna keep
Risen.
piling up
Yeah.
because paying for people is not cheap.
Or keeping yourself
Yeah.
alive. 4. How does the author respond to his condition? How did those around him impact his response? I think the author responded to his condition pretty well. Like
It took him a while to realize it though.
Yeah,
Like the full
I
extent.
think in the beginning he was hopeful that like he was gonna get his
With the
normal life
wheelchair and
back.
everything.
Yeah.
But I think he like came to terms with it at the end of the book, because like I think he obviously didn't like his situation, but like he understood that it happened and you can't change it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even throughout the book, he was making jokes about it. Like you could tell he was still kind of jovial. He was joking, like with the
Yeah.
tourists, the people who were in there for a little bit of time. He said whenever he walked up to them or he was rolled by them, they would look away and they'd like look at the fire extinguisher, and he was like, "Oh, they must be real concerned about fire safety or something," which
Yeah.
I thought was funny. I thought he was joking there,
Yeah.
which shows that he still, has a semblance of who he used to be, right?
And then like I don't know how true, but like at first I felt like because he thought that his friends were like just showing pity for him.
Yeah.
But then after they broke through that, he felt like they could just carry on like old conversations, but differently.
Yeah. I think his family was a big part of it. Like his kids still treated him like he was the dad, and like
Yeah, like
they didn't act distant. So I think that helped him through
they're
a
just
lot.
too young to like really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So they just acted like they were children their age.
Yeah.
And going along with the hospital staff, I think it was like double-sided. Like some of the hospital staff like didn't really understand his condition. I'm not saying they didn't respect him, but like they kind of acted like he wasn't even there.
Like
But
the
then,
eye?
but then there was other ones that like the speech therapist who like pretty much got him out of his shell by teaching him the new language.
Mhm.
So I think that really helped him in his response to having locked-in syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does the book have any impact on how you view people with disabilities? Why or why not?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
believe it does. Yeah.
I think it would because like usually if I saw that I'd just like feel really bad for them. But now I kind of like I would still feel bad for them, but maybe like I don't know. I think of it a little bit different.
I think it changes my perspective mainly because like because people with disabilities like you think of them differently, but you
Yeah.
want to think of them the same.
Mhm.
But this kind of changes it to where like they have feelings too.
Yeah.
Can y'all leave?
Please, we need this quiet.
Sorry, it's Taylor Booth, Kyler, and Matthew Whitten.
Wow, that's the first time talking.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
like kind of like a throwback to the other question about his purpose for writing the book. It shows that like people with disabilities, they can still form thoughts. They may display differently, and like how they communicate with people is different, but they still. It shows that the people can communicate, and there's still
Yeah.
high level thought within somebody with a disability.
Oh, this book also made me feel more like how lucky I am to not have a disability.
Oh,
like
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I would do. If I got
And
stuck
like
in my-
how you're blessed with health, and like some people have it worse than you do.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Number 6.
The author was able to reflect on the importance of his life due to his sudden illness, support or refute the claim that his physical paralysis was a benefit to his consciousness.
So this is saying that like basically his physical problem is the reason for his mind like growing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like I think like when he talked about kind of like how he can remember dreams better now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that's like because he's not able to like show his emotions as much. Like he's able to remember stuff and think through stuff more clearly. So I think that helped in like the building of his like mind and consciousness.
Mhm. Yeah. And he starts as the book goes on. He really starts to delve deep into his imagination, like the part where he's talking with the old patroness of the hospital.
Yeah,
and the painting.
or how he was like traveling through time.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about like when he went to like the ladies of Hong Kong.
Mhm,
So like
yeah.
how he was able to like travel back through his mind.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then like they
So-
say like with the human body, if like you lose one sense, usually like a different sense comes
Yeah,
back
it takes
stronger.
over, it takes up.
So it's
Mhm.
like him losing his physical abilities
Yeah.
and his mind would become a lot
Yeah, his
stronger.
mind became
Mhm.
super strong.
Yeah.
Like Stephen Hawking.
Because that was the thing that was keeping him alive, pretty much.
That's the only thing he has. So it's gonna get stronger if you're. That's the only thing you can use constantly.
Yeah, kind of to play devil's advocate. That could also be chalked up to like he was a journalist before he came into all this, so that
Yeah.
certainly would have helped him like kind of like think outside the book with fashion. People in the fashion industry describe like clothes like it's silky like the waves or something. I don't know, but and that could be argued that that's the reason why he was able to maintain that level of thought and not because he was sick.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Assisted suicide is a hot issue. Do you believe someone in the author's position should have the choice to choose assisted suicide?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you should have the choice.
I think he should have had a choice, but I think he probably wouldn't have chose it though. I think he,
Mhm.
he
Yeah, I
probably
don't
should
think
have
he
been.
would have, but if
But
but
he's-
this-
he should have the
still should
choice, is what they're
yeah.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with like in his instance, I think he didn't like enjoy that he got it, but I think the challenge of having this like disability, I think it kind of like it challenged him to like want to get over it, like
Yeah.
overcome what happened to him.
I mean, not everybody's like when he got it, he had like at least family and friends that were like usually visiting him.
Yeah.
But I mean, if somebody doesn't have that and they have nothing, they're just always there
Yeah.
alone, and I think they should have that choice.
And he
Yeah.
talks about in the beginning of the book how the whole reason he was able to live was because of medical technology at the time. Like
Yeah.
he died and they had brought him back
Yeah.
from the dead. So if it were not like 20 or 30 years earlier from the
Yeah.
1980s, he
He's
wouldn't have
dead,
been he would have been dead.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know the passage of time affects that, but that should be a choice for somebody to make. They need that.
Number 8, how would you respond in the same situation as the author?
I don't know if I would have responded as well as he would have, because I guess he'd had more time in his life. Like, I feel like I would have been cheated like years off my life. But I mean, I think I would have like tried to overcome it. I would have tried to learn the
Yeah.
language with the eye and like.
What else could you do? I mean,
Yeah, it's not like you can't change it. Like
Yeah,
you just have to
you're
hope
gonna have
that
to
medical
accept it.
advances like help you like
eventually
prolong your
over time.
life.
Yeah.
Like you come to
Right.
terms with it.
I wouldn't even know what to do.
Spend your time reading. I guess I'd study more. What else can you do? Like have somebody read to you, learn more about the world.
Wish I had like a book properly.
Yeah.
You can't travel. You can't do anything.
I think it kind of sucked, like being stuck in a hospital room. Because I mean, especially with because he said sometimes like the hospital workers would like kind of jerk his arm around, like he can still feel his arm, like
Yeah.
he may only be able to move his head, but he can still feel other extremities on his body. So like if you had good care workers, then like I think it'd be manageable. Like obviously it wouldn't be fun, like, but you get used to it.
Yeah, but if I were in this situation, I think I don't know. If my family, I know my family would stick with me, but they're pretty busy a lot of the time and they can't really hang out with me.
Yeah.
So
I'd almost feel like I was a burden.
Yeah.
Even though you wouldn't want to feel like a burden, you'd understand that like you're a burden to other
I
people.
feel like if I was older, like end of my life, and this happened, I'd probably just want to die.
I just wanted to
Because
end.
it's so expensive. Like if it happened to me right now in my
Yeah.
life, just the medical bills would pile up forever. Like
Yeah,
And
you don't
then
want
your kids would have to pay that.
Yeah,
and I
you
don't
don't
want
want
that
your
for my
kids
kids,
worried about
And right now there's not a choice for you to do that. To say, hey, I don't want to have my kids paying for this, and you can't say that.
yeah.
You're right. Number 9. Would you recommend this book to others? Why? Or why not?
I would recommend this book to others because it makes you like think deeper than most other books. Like this like has moral issues, like makes you think, like kind of tugs your heartstrings a little bit. So like I think it's an all around good book. It teaches you about like syndromes, teaches you what people with disabilities go through, what hospitals are like.
Yeah, it shows you from the inside about people with disabilities.
Yeah, it's really well written too. I think it's just he knows how to write.
Yeah,
Like it just
you can't physically write.
yeah, even though he can't physically write, he knows how to. He's good with words, and
Yeah.
and that's expressed well in the book. If you're into that sort of thing.
What do you think, Keaton?
I would recommend this to others because it just shows you what others go through.
We're done.